From UFOs to psychic powers and government conspiracies, history is riddled with unexplained events. You can turn back now, or learn the stuff they don't want you to know. Here's where it gets crazy. Since it was signed into law in October 2001, the Patriot Act has become a subject of increasing controversy. According to scholars such as Elliot Mintzberg, director for People for the American Way, the Justice Department has used terrorism as a guise to expand law enforcement powers in areas that are totally unrelated to terrorism. It's true that the Patriot Act has been used to investigate non-terroristic crimes. In fact, the intelligence community was waiting for the opportunity to pass this sort of legislation. Far from being custom-made legislation designed as a reaction to 9/11, the Patriot Act is instead an amalgamation of various powers the intelligence community has wanted for years.
Good afternoon, Mr. Owens. I guess to answer some of the questions that you had posed a few minutes earlier concerning the Patriot Act, for the last 25 plus years, I've dealt really in the criminal world. And basically, when you come to an act such as a Patriot Act, it'd be nice to have a constitutional law professor, a person who is involved with that area of the law on a regular and continuous basis.
When the Patriot Act came out, were you for it or against it?
Well, when it came out, I was for it, but after being able to read some of the provisions, I guess there's provisions in there that I'm against. That's why I think it's complex. Personally, I thought when we had 9/11, I thought it was a good act because I think it made American people feel better about being safe in their own country. But then, for instance, I think there's some parts of it that's is unconstitutional for the mere fact that it does invade people's privacy, or they can get, the law enforcement can get copies of your records. If you come from another country into the United States to work, they can get access to your medical records, your dental records, or any other records that they feel is important.
But I will say, in the area of criminal law, the Patriot Act does venture over into my sphere of influence. You know, if we go back to President Bush in October, I think 26th of 2001, when the act was passed, most people think that when you say the Patriot Act, it's about patriotism. And really, that act is not so much about patriotism, but the consolidation of several other acts that existed concerning the financing, criminal activity, wiretapping, what have you, involving espionage and crime in America.
I don't support it. I thought at the time that it was an overreach, and I still do. I'm glad that at the beginning of June, when there was a sunset, 3 of the provisions weren't actually re-voted in. I don't think the government needs to have a complete record of all of our phone calls and all of our emails. That's what we have the CIA for, and they're pretty good at catching spies, terrorists, and the like. We don't need to be worried about all of our own population. That seems like something Hitler would do after the burning of the Reichstag.
And they shouldn't do that. If they're doing it for one thing, then do it for that one thing, for terrorism, and try to help the U.S. and try to help the world, but not able to just tap into anybody's landline phone or anybody's cell phone.
Well, Patriot Act, man, I honestly think it's bullshit. You know, I would say, I mean, from back in the day, I thought it was all about, what is it, privacy, and just, not having to worry about frickin' people looking over your shoulder. And now I constantly feel like I'm being watched through my goddamn cell phone.
Alright, thank you.
Hi, my name is Robert. I just wanted to put my 2 cents in on the Patriot Act. I don't think it's right that they are allowed to spy on us now and know anything that we're doing. The Plainfield Police Department just got a drone that can fly overhead. It's got surveillance, it's got audio, and they can watch us at any time, and I just don't think that's right to be doing that to American citizens.
And that's where the Patriot Act came from. So, what really is it? It's approximately 10 different titles that basically cover different areas of things that we said, financing, wiretapping, the use of the information sharing of surveillance, of information, because prior to that time, the arguments on TV after 9/11 was the right hand didn't know what the left one was doing, because you had NSA, the FBI, the Army, whoever was involved in the gathering of information or knowing something about the alleged terrorists, that information wasn't shared. And the American public was highly upset. People were afraid and deeply concerned. So immediately Congress hopped into motion to create a set of laws that would address it.
Right, well, it's no secret that the U.S. tends to get more and better intelligence out of computers nowadays than they do out of people. I was trained as a spy in sort of the traditional sense of the word, in that I lived and worked undercover overseas, pretending to work in a job that I'm not, and even being assigned a name that was not mine. Now, the government might deny these things. They might frame it in certain ways and say, oh, well, you know, he's a low-level analyst. But what they're trying to do is they're trying to use one position that I've had in a career here or there to distract from the totality of my experience, which is that I've worked for the Central Intelligence Agency, undercover, overseas. I've worked for the National Security Agency, undercover, overseas, and I've worked for the Defense Intelligence Agency as a lecturer at the Joint Counterintelligence Training Academy, where I developed sources and methods for keeping our information and people secure in the most hostile and dangerous environments around the world. So when they say I'm a low-level systems administrator, that I don't know what I'm talking about, I'd say it's somewhat misleading.
No, I'm not going to be scrambling jets to get a 29-year-old hacker.
I hope that we don't decide that our national security interests are going to be determined by a high school dropout who had a whole series of both academic troubles and employment troubles.
To get a 29-year-old hacker.
I voted against the original Patriot Act. I voted against the reauthorization of the Patriot Act. Look, we have got to be vigorous in fighting terrorism and protecting the American people, but we have to do it in a way that protects the constitutional rights of the American people, and I'm very, very worried about the invasion of privacy rights that we're seeing not only from the NSA and the government, but from corporate America as well. We're losing our privacy rights. It's a huge issue.